He was watching her on the cameras like he watched everyone, waiting for her to steal something, to lie, to leave like all the others. But what he saw that night stopped his heart. She was kneeling between his sons, doing something he thought was impossible. And when Gerald Smith realized what it meant, his coffee slipped from his hands, the mug shattered on the floor, and he fell to his knees, because everything he thought he knew about her was a lie. Gerald Smith's house was full of silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that stays after you've lost too much, heavy, thick, like something died and never left. His twin boys used to make noise. Mason and Henry running through these rooms, laughing, crashing into furniture and each other, but that was before the accident, before their mother died, before they came home in wheelchairs, 4 years old now, barely speaking, barely looking up. Gerald tried everything, the best doctors, the best equipment, nothing worked. So he did what he knew how to do. He built walls, high ones, 26 cameras, every hallway, every corner. Because in 3 years, 7 people walked through that door to help, and 7 people betrayed him. 1 sold photos of his sons to the press, 1 stole medications, 1 disappeared with their therapy schedules in the middle of the night. Trust wasn't something he gave anymore. It was something people took. So when Samantha Brown showed up that morning in March, 1 small suitcase, quiet, too calm, Gerald handed her a contract and didn't ask questions. She was just another risk, another person he'd have to watch. And watch her, he did, through the cameras, every day, every night, looking for the lie, the moment she'd slip. But 2 weeks later, something happened, something he didn't expect. Late at night, his sons woke up crying, and Samantha went to them. Gerald stood frozen in the hallway, listening through the monitor as she sang them back to sleep. A lullaby, the same one his wife used to sing, the same one no one else knew. Gerald's hands went cold. How did she know that song? He waited until she left the room. Then he went into her quarters and searched. In the top drawer, he found a photograph, face down. When he turned it over, his world stopped. But before we continue, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because if you've ever wondered whether God really sends people into your life exactly when you need them, this story will give you your answer. The photograph showed a younger Samantha in a paramedic uniform, kneeling on a dark stretch of motorway beside an overturned car. Emergency lights flashing in the background, her face tired, stained with something that looked like blood. Gerald's hands shook as he turned it over. On the back in careful handwriting, September 17th, 2022. M25. The night everything changed. For them, for me. Rachel's last words. Find my boys. Promise me. He sat down hard on the edge of her bed. September 17th, 2022. The night of the accident, the night Rachel died, the night Mason and Henry stopped walking. Samantha had been there. She wasn't just some caregiver his security team found. She was the paramedic who responded to the crash, the one who pulled his sons from the wreckage, the one his wife, his dying wife, spoke to in her final moments, and Rachel had asked her to find them. Gerald's chest tightened, his breath came shallow. He pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to make sense of it. Why hadn't she told him? Why walk into his house, sign a contract, pretend to be a stranger, when she'd been there the night his entire world shattered? His phone was in his hand before he realized it. He opened the browser, typed in, London Ambulance Service. September 17th, 2022, M25 accident. News articles filled the screen. He'd read them all before, hundreds of times in the months after it happened, searching for details, for answers, for something to make sense of why Rachel had to die. But now he was looking for something different. He scrolled, clicked, read faster. First responders arrived within minutes. 2 children extracted from vehicle. Mother pronounced dead at scene. Then he found it. A smaller article. Local news. A photo at the bottom. Paramedics standing beside an ambulance. 3 of them. And there, on the left, Samantha. Younger. Exhausted. staring at the camera like she'd seen something no one should have to see. The caption read, "Paramedic Samantha Brown, who assisted in the rescue, was later hospitalized after complications related to the incident." Hospitalized. Gerald's stomach dropped. He clicked again. Searched deeper. Hospital records weren't public, but incident reports were. He found the log. S. Brown, admitted St. George's Hospital, 2352. Emergency obstetrics, premature labor, 24 weeks. The room tilted. She'd been pregnant, and something happened that night, something bad enough to put her in the hospital right after she saved his sons. Gerald stood, the photograph still in his hand, his mind racing, heart pounding. Samantha had lost something that night too, and now she was here, living in his house, caring for his boys, singing lullabies his dead wife used to sing. Down the hall, he heard her footsteps returning from the kitchen. He had seconds to decide. Confront her, demand the truth, or keep watching, keep digging, find out what else she wasn't telling him, because if she'd hidden this, what else was she hiding? Gerald put the photograph back exactly where he found it, closed the drawer, left her room before she came back down the hall. He couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not until he knew what he was dealing with. That night, he sat in his office with the monitors glowing in front of him. But he wasn't looking for lies anymore. He was looking for answers. Camera 7, the playroom. Samantha was helping Mason with his physical therapy exercises, simple ones, lifting his arms, reaching for soft blocks, trying to strengthen the muscles that still worked. The doctor said it was important. Gerald paid for it. But watching his son struggle always felt like watching him lose again. Mason's hand trembled as he reached. The block slipped from his fingers. "That's okay," Samantha said softly. "Try again. You're doing great." Mason tried. Failed. His little face crumpled, frustration building. "Hey," she whispered, leaning closer. "Your mama would be so proud of how hard you're trying. You know that?" Gerald froze. Mason looked up at her. Really looked. His eyes wide, curious. "You knew my mama." Samantha's face didn't change. But Gerald saw it, just for a second. Something broke behind her eyes. "I met her once," Samantha said quietly. "A long time ago, and she told me you were the bravest boy she'd ever known." Mason's lip quivered. "She said that?" "She did." Henry, sitting in his wheelchair nearby, spoke for the first time in days. "What else did she say?" Samantha smiled, gentle and sad. "She said she loved you both more than the whole world, and that no matter what happened, she'd always be watching over you." Gerald's throat burned. Mason reached for the block again. This time he held it. "Look," he whispered, "I did it." "You did," Samantha said, and she saw. Gerald turned off the monitor, stood, walked to the window overlooking the city lights. She'd been there, in Rachel's final moments, heard her last words, made a promise, and now she was here, speaking to his sons like she carried pieces of their mother with her. But why the secrecy? Why not tell him from the beginning, unless there was more? Something darker, something she couldn't say. His phone buzzed, a text from his investigator. "Found hospital records. Brown was admitted same night as your wife. Obstetrics emergency. Baby didn't survive. Thought you should know." Gerald's legs gave out. He sat down hard. She'd lost a child the night she saved his, and she still came back, still found them, still kept her promise. The question wasn't why she'd hidden it anymore. The question was, how much had she sacrificed to be here? The next morning, Gerald didn't sleep. He sat with those hospital records spread across his desk until dawn broke through the windows. Samantha Brown. Admitted 2352. Premature labor induced by trauma. Infant deceased at 24 weeks. She'd been 6 months pregnant. And whatever happened that night, the crash, the rescue, the chaos, it took her baby. Gerald pushed the papers away, rubbed his face with both hands. She saved his sons and lost her own child in the process. And now she was here, in his home, caring for Mason and Henry like they were hers. He should fire her. The lies alone were reason enough. But something stopped him. Something he couldn't name yet. Downstairs, he heard her voice, soft, patient. He pulled up the monitor. Camera 7 again. Samantha sat on the floor with the twins, not forcing therapy this time, just sitting. A picture book open in her lap. "This one's about a little bird who lost his way home," she said gently. "But he kept flying, kept looking. And you know what? He found it." Henry leaned forward slightly, just an inch. But it was something. "Did he cry?" Henry asked. "Yeah," Samantha said. "He cried a lot because being lost is scary, but crying didn't make him weak. It made him honest." Mason, quieter, whispered, "Do you think Mama cried?" The question hung in the air. Gerald's chest tightened. He leaned closer to the screen. Samantha set the book down, looked at Mason with eyes so full of tenderness it hurt to watch. "I think she did," Samantha said softly. "I think she cried because she didn't want to leave you. But I also think she knew you'd be okay, because you're stronger than you know." Mason's face crumpled. "But I'm not strong. I can't even walk." "Strong isn't about walking," Samantha whispered. "It's about waking up every day, even when you're sad. It's about trying even when it's hard. And you do that, Mason, every single day." Henry reached over and took his brother's hand. And then something happened that Gerald hadn't seen in over a year. Mason smiled, small, fragile, but real. Gerald's hand covered his mouth. Samantha pulled both boys close, held them, and Gerald saw her shoulders shake, just once, like she was holding back tears of her own. He turned off the monitor, stood, walked out of his office and down the hall. He had to know, had to ask her directly. But when he reached the playroom door and looked through the window, he stopped. Because what he saw wasn't a caregiver doing her job. It was a woman mourning with his sons, grieving alongside them, like she understood their pain in ways he never could. And Gerald realized something terrifying. She wasn't here to replace Rachel. She was here because Rachel sent her. Gerald didn't walk into the playroom that day. He turned around, went back to his office, closed the door. He needed time, space, something to make sense of what he was feeling. Because the truth was starting to terrify him. Over the next 3 days, he watched her more carefully than ever before. But he wasn't searching for deception anymore. He was searching for proof that what he was seeing was real. Every morning, Samantha woke before sunrise. He saw her through camera 4, the kitchen, making breakfast for the twins. Not the meals the chef prepared, her own. Scrambled eggs, toast cut into shapes, fruit arranged like little suns on their plates. Small things, thoughtful things, things a mother would do. At night, after the twins were asleep, she stayed in the playroom, folding their blankets, organizing their toys, sitting by the window with her Bible open in her lap, lips moving in silent prayer. Gerald zoomed in once, close enough to see her face. She was crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears falling while she prayed. And Gerald wondered, was she praying for them? Or for the child she'd lost? One afternoon, Gerald's assistant brought him financial records he'd requested, bank statements, 3 years' worth. He scanned them slowly. Samantha's salary as a paramedic had been modest. After she left the ambulance service, she'd worked 2 jobs, one at a pediatric clinic, one stocking shelves at a grocery store overnight. And yet, every month, without fail, there were transfers, large ones, to a medical trust fund. Gerald traced the account number, called his lawyer. "Find out who this belongs to," he said. 2 hours later, the lawyer called back. "It's registered to your sons, Mr. Smith. Someone's been funding their therapy equipment for the past 2 years, anonymously." Gerald's hand tightened around the phone. "How much?" "Just over £47,000. The room spun. £47,000. Nearly everything she'd earned. Gone. All of it poured into helping 2 boys she'd never even met yet. Gerald hung up, sat in the silence. She'd been preparing, saving, making sure Mason and Henry had what they needed long before she ever walked through his door. This wasn't a job to her. This was a mission. But why? Why sacrifice everything? Why give up her whole life for a promise made to a dying stranger? Unless Rachel had seen something in her, something Gerald still couldn't see. Or maybe something he was too afraid to see. Down the hall he heard laughter, real laughter. Mason's voice high and bright saying, "Do it again, Sam, do the funny voice again." Gerald stood, walked to the hallway, stopped just outside the playroom door. Through the window, he watched Samantha make silly faces while reading to the twins, watched his sons laugh, really laugh, for the first time since the accident. And Gerald knew. He couldn't let her stay, not because she was lying, but because if she stayed much longer, his sons would love her, and losing her would destroy them all over again. Gerald found her in the kitchen that evening. The twins were already in bed. The house was quiet. She was making tea. Didn't hear him come in. "You were there," he said. Samantha's hand froze on the kettle. She turned slowly. Gerald stood in the doorway, the photograph in his hand. Her eyes dropped to it, and he saw everything in her face: recognition, fear, relief, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Yes," she said quietly. "You pulled them out of the car." "I did." Gerald's voice shook. "My wife spoke to you." Samantha's eyes filled. She nodded. "What did she say?" His throat burned. "Tell me exactly what she said." Samantha set the kettle down, took a breath. She was in the front seat. "Badly hurt. We knew..." Her voice cracked. "We knew she wasn't going to make it, but she was still conscious, still fighting. And when we got Mason and Henry out, when I told her they were alive, she grabbed my wrist." Gerald's hands trembled. "She looked at me," Samantha continued, tears streaming now, and she said, "If I don't make it, promise me you'll find my boys. Love them the way I would have." Gerald's knees weakened. He gripped the counter. "I promised her," Samantha whispered. "Right there, I promised." "And your baby?" Gerald's voice broke. "You lost your baby that night." Samantha closed her eyes. A sob escaped. "The trauma. It triggered early labor. My daughter was born at the hospital while your sons were in surgery." She wiped her face. "She lived 20 minutes. I held her. And the whole time, all I could think was, at least I saved someone else's children." Gerald couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Why hide it?" "Because I didn't come here for sympathy, Mr. Smith." Her voice was steady despite the tears. "I came because I made a promise to a dying mother, and your sons deserved someone who'd fight for them the way she would have." "The money," Gerald said, "the equipment, that was you. They needed it. You gave everything." They were worth it. Silence hung between them, heavy, unbearable. Gerald looked at her, really looked, and saw someone who'd sacrificed more than he could comprehend, someone who'd kept a sacred promise when most people would have walked away. And it terrified him, because his sons already loved her. And if she left, if she betrayed them like everyone else, they wouldn't survive it. "I need you to go," he said. Samantha's face shattered. "Mr. Smith, pack your things. I want you gone by morning." "You came here under false pretenses," Gerald said. His voice was cold, controlled. "You had a personal connection to my family that you deliberately hid." "I came here because your wife asked me to." "My wife is dead," the words exploded out of him. "And you've been using my sons to heal from your own loss. That's what this is. You lost your baby and now you're..." "Don't," Samantha's voice cut through, quiet but firm. "Don't do that." But Gerald couldn't stop. Fear makes people cruel, and he was drowning in it. "You manipulated your way into our lives, made yourself indispensable. And what happens when you leave, Samantha? What happens when you get what you need from them and walk away?" "I would never." "Everyone leaves," his voice broke. "Everyone." From down the hall, a small voice. "Sam." They both froze. Mason, awake, listening. "Where's Sam going?" Henry's voice joined. Samantha's face crumpled. She moved toward the hallway, but Gerald stepped in her path. "Don't," he said. She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was unbearable. But she turned toward the hall anyway, knelt down even though she couldn't see the boys, but they could hear her. "I love you both so much," she said, voice shaking. "You remember that, okay? You're strong, you're brave, and your mama, she's so proud of you." "Don't leave," Mason cried. "Please don't leave." "Stay, Sam," Henry begged. Samantha covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Gerald stood frozen, watching his sons beg for someone to stay, watching the woman his wife sent to them break in front of him, and he said nothing. Samantha stood, wiped her face, looked at Gerald one last time. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I hope someday you'll understand that." She walked past him, up the stairs, and 15 minutes later she came back down with her small suitcase, the same one she'd arrived with. She didn't look at him as she opened the front door. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was devastation. Gerald stood in the entryway, alone, the twins crying down the hall. He'd gotten what he wanted: control, safety, protection from the risk of losing anyone else. But the house felt emptier than it ever had before, and somewhere deep in his chest a voice whispered, "What have you done?" The house felt different after she left, not silent. It had always been silent, but hollow now, like something living had been ripped out and nothing grew back. The twins stopped eating. Gerald tried everything: their favorite foods, new plates, letting them pick whatever they wanted. But Mason and Henry just stared at their meals, faces empty, and pushed the plates away. "Where's Sam?" Mason asked every morning. Gerald didn't have an answer, not one that made sense to a 4-year-old. By the 3rd day they stopped asking, and that was worse. They stopped talking altogether, stopped looking at him, just sat by the window in their wheelchairs, staring out at the street like they were waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. Gerald tried to comfort them, tried to hold them, but when he reached for Mason, his son pulled away. "You made her leave," Mason whispered, and the look in his eyes, it wasn't anger, it was something deeper: betrayal. Gerald couldn't breathe. That night his investigator called. "I went through everything, Mr. Smith, school records, employment history, hospital logs from that night. And? It's all verified. She was the lead paramedic on the scene. Her name is on your wife's intake chart at St. George's, and the note, we had a handwriting analyst compare it to samples from your wife's journals." Gerald closed his eyes. "It's a match, sir. Mrs. Smith wrote that note. Everything Samantha told you, it's true." Gerald hung up, sat in the dark. She hadn't lied, not about any of it. She'd sacrificed everything: her career, her savings, her own grief, to keep a promise to a dying woman she didn't even know. And he'd sent her away, called her a liar, accused her of using his sons because he was terrified, because trusting someone meant risking loss. And Gerald had already lost too much. But now, sitting in this empty house, listening to his sons cry themselves to sleep for the 3rd night in a row, he realized something. He hadn't protected them by pushing Samantha away. He'd broken them. Gerald walked to the twins' room, stood in the doorway. Mason was asleep, tear-stained face pressed into his pillow. Henry stared at the ceiling, eyes open, not blinking. "Henry," Gerald whispered. His son didn't respond, didn't even look at him. And Gerald understood. He'd become the thing he feared most: another person who left his sons alone. He went to his office, pulled out his phone, stared at Samantha's number for a long time. He should call, apologize, beg her to come back. But before he could, an alarm shrieked through the house, the medical monitor, Mason's room. Gerald ran. Mason wasn't breathing. Gerald burst into the room and saw his son's face, blue-tinged, eyes rolled back, body limp in the bed. Henry was screaming, "Daddy! Daddy, help him!" Gerald froze, complete paralyzing terror. His hands shook, his mind went blank. He couldn't think, couldn't move. "Mason!" He grabbed his son's shoulders. "Mason, wake up!" Nothing. Gerald fumbled for his phone, hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped it. He didn't dial 999. He didn't call the hospital. He called Samantha. She answered on the first ring. "Gerald? Mason's not breathing. I can't." His voice broke. "Please, keep him on his side. I'm coming. Samantha, I'm already in the car." She was there in 6 minutes. The front door slammed open. Samantha ran through the house, still in pajamas, coat thrown over her shoulders, hair undone. She dropped to her knees beside Mason's bed. "Move," she said. Gerald stepped back. Samantha's hands moved with precision, checking his airway, positioning his head, 2 fingers under his jaw. He aspirated. "Henry, look at me." Her voice was calm, steady. "Your brother's going to be okay. I need you to be brave for 2 more minutes. Can you do that?" Henry nodded, tears streaming. Samantha cleared Mason's airway, tilted his head back, gave 2 rescue breaths. 15 seconds, 30. Gerald couldn't breathe either, couldn't think. Just watch this woman he'd thrown out, fight for his son's life. 45 seconds. Then Mason coughed, gasped. His chest rose, color flooded back into his face. Samantha held him, monitoring his breathing, one hand on his chest, the other cradling his head. "You're okay," she whispered. "I've got you. You're safe." Mason's eyes opened, confused, scared. "Sam?" His voice was so small. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." Gerald collapsed against the wall. A sob tore out of him, raw, guttural, everything he'd been holding in for days. The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. Paramedics, people who knew Samantha, respected her, took over. "Good work, Sam," one of them said quietly. Mason was stable. They'd transport him for observation, but he was out of danger. As they loaded Mason into the ambulance, Henry grabbed Samantha's hand, held it tight. "Don't leave again," he whispered. "We need you." Samantha looked at Gerald. And Gerald, broken, humbled, destroyed by his own pride, finally understood. She hadn't come to take anything. She'd come because Rachel knew her sons would need someone who'd give everything, someone who'd show up even after being pushed away, someone who'd keep a promise even when it cost her everything. She was the answer to a prayer Gerald didn't know his wife had whispered, and he'd almost lost her. The hospital corridor was cold, sterile. Gerald sat in a plastic chair while doctors examined Mason. Samantha sat 3 seats away, exhausted, still in her pajamas. Gerald couldn't stop looking at her. "You saved his life," he whispered. "I kept my promise." Gerald moved to the chair beside her. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust people. I don't know how to let someone in without feeling like I'm losing control of everything." Samantha looked at him. Her eyes were tired but kind. "Control won't keep them safe, Gerald. Love will. I said terrible things to you. You were scared. I'm still scared. So am I," she said quietly, "every single day. But I'm here anyway." Silence settled between them, not heavy, just honest. "Why?" Gerald asked. "Why come back? After everything I said, why answer the phone?" Samantha's voice was soft. "Because your wife looked at me in her last moments and trusted me with the most important thing in her world. I wasn't going to break that promise, not for anything." Gerald's throat burned. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," Samantha said, "but your sons deserve a father who's brave enough to accept help, to let people love them." When the doctors cleared them to see Mason, both twins were together in the same room. Mason awake, tired, Henry holding his brother's hand. Gerald knelt between their beds. "I need to tell you both something," he said, voice shaking. "Sam didn't just come to take care of you. Your mama, before she died, she asked Sam to find you, to love you, and Sam's been trying to do that from the very beginning." "Mama sent her?" Mason's eyes widened. "Yes." Then why did you make her leave? Henry's voice was small but accusing. Gerald's tears fell. Because I was so afraid of losing anyone else that I pushed away the person your mama knew we needed most. He looked at Samantha standing in the doorway. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. Samantha stepped forward, knelt beside the beds. I lost my daughter the night I pulled you from that wreck, she told the twins gently. And for so long, I thought that meant I'd never get to be a mom. But your mama, she gave me the greatest gift. She gave me you. Like a mom? Henry asked quietly. Samantha's breath caught. If that's what you want. Both boys reached for her, and Gerald, watching from the corner, finally saw what Rachel had seen 3 years ago on a dark motorway. Not just a paramedic, not just a caregiver, the person God had chosen to put their family back together. 6 months later, Gerald stood in the kitchen making breakfast, something he'd never done before Samantha came. Mason and Henry sat at the table, laughing about something silly, their faces brighter than he'd seen in years. Samantha walked in, smiled at the mess he was making with the eggs. Need help? Probably, Gerald admitted. She stood beside him, not taking over, just there. Mason called out, Mom, can we go to the park after breakfast? Samantha's eyes filled. She'd never get used to hearing that word. Of course, sweetheart. Gerald reached over, took her hand. Rachel knew, he whispered. She knew what we'd all need. Samantha squeezed back. She sent us each other. And standing there, 4 people who'd all lost something, all been broken, all been brought back together by a promise made in the darkest moment, Gerald finally understood. God doesn't always answer prayers the way we expect. Sometimes he answers them in ways we can't see until we're ready. Sometimes grace looks like a stranger. Sometimes healing comes through the very person we're afraid to trust. And sometimes, just sometimes, love keeps its promises even when the world says it's impossible.